Hi there. Welcome to Hushed History Channel. Tonight, we're diving into the raw, unfiltered world of prehistoric women, where survival meant navigating invisible social rules that could mean the difference between respect and exile, between eating well and starving in the shadows. You're about to discover that cave women lived by laws far more complex than find food, make babies, don't get eaten. And honestly, you probably wouldn't last a week under their system without breaking at least 12 sacred taboos. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. All right, let's begin the story. You wake before dawn in a limestone cave, your body pressed against cool stone that's been polished smooth by countless generations of your ancestors. The air tastes of smoke and dried herbs, and somewhere in the darkness, you hear the soft breathing of 20 other women and children. This is your world, 30,000 BCE, give or take a few millennia, and you're about to navigate another day in a society where unspoken rules govern every gesture, every glance, every morsel of food you dare to touch. Your grandmother stirs beside you, and even in the darkness, you feel her authority radiating like heat from embers. She doesn't need to speak. Her movements alone communicate the first law of cave life. Seniority determines everything. As a woman in your prime childbearing years, you might think you'd hold some power, but you'd be wrong. The real authority belongs to the postmenopausal women, the ones who've survived long enough to accumulate decades of knowledge about which plants heal and which ones kill, where the best clay deposits hide, and most importantly, who owes what to whom in the complex web of social debts that keeps your band alive. You rise silently, careful not to wake the children clustered near the fire pit. Another unspoken rule: whoever wakes the babies deals with them all day. It's a punishment severe enough that even the clumsiest among you have learned to move like shadows in the pre-dawn hours. Your bare feet find their way across the cave floor by memory, avoiding the sharp edges of flint-napping debris and the soft spots where toddlers have had nighttime accidents. Outside, the world is painted in shades of grey and silver. You breathe in air so clean it makes your lungs ache, though you don't have the words to describe pollution or its absence. What you do know is that certain areas outside the cave are off limits to you at certain times. The eastern rocks where the men gather to plan hunts, you wouldn't dare approach them until the sun reaches its peak. Not because anyone explicitly told you not to. Well, actually, that's exactly what happened when you were 7, and your aunt cuffed you hard enough to make your ears ring for wandering too close during a ritual preparation. These territorial divisions aren't random. Historians still argue whether these gender-segregated spaces emerge from practical concerns or spiritual beliefs. But for you, they're simply reality. The smooth boulders by the stream where women crush ochre for paint and medicine? No man would risk sitting there unless he wanted to face the mockery of every male in the band for the rest of his life. And mockery, in a society where reputation determines whether you eat well or scrape by on scraps, might as well be a death sentence. You make your way to the designated female morning area, where the earliest risers are already beginning their daily routines. Your cousin sits cross-legged, working yesterday's hide with a stone scraper. The rhythmic scratch, scratch, scratch creates a meditation soundtrack that won't be invented as a concept for another 30,000 years. She glances up at you, notes the slight puffiness under your eyes, and wordlessly passes you a handful of bitter herbs. Another law: Women track each other's monthly cycles with frightening accuracy, and they intervene without being asked. Privacy, as you'll understand it in future millennia, doesn't exist here. The herbs taste like dirt and disappointment, but you chew them anyway. Your cousin's grandmother swears they prevent the cramping that can lay you low for days. And in a world without ibuprofen or heating pads, you'll take whatever edge you can get. Plus, refusing gifts, especially medicinal ones, violates about 6 different social protocols. You'd have to reciprocate with something equally valuable within 3 days, or risk being labeled as someone who takes without giving. That label follows you harder than a hungry cave bear. The sun creeps higher, painting the canyon walls in shades of rust and gold, and you notice something that would make modern anthropologists lose their minds. Your aunt is wearing the leader's necklace, not the ceremonial one made of cave bear teeth that the hunt leader wears. No, this is the real power symbol, crafted from perfectly matched river pearls that took 3 generations to collect. Your band doesn't have a word for matriarchy, but if they did, this necklace would be its dictionary definition. You watch as 2 younger men approach your aunt with their heads slightly lowered, not quite submissive, but definitely respectful. They're asking permission for something, probably to venture into new hunting grounds, and she makes them wait. She continues scraping fat from a hide with deliberate slowness, letting them shift their weight from foot to foot like anxious children. This is power, raw and undiluted, and it has nothing to do with physical strength. The thing modern historians often miss is that controlling information meant controlling everything. Your aunt knows which water sources dry up in late summer, where the herds migrate when storms shift their patterns, which families have eligible daughters ready for marriage negotiations. She holds this knowledge like a merchant hoarding gold, except gold hasn't been discovered yet and wouldn't mean much to you if it had. Knowledge feeds bellies, shiny rocks don't. When she finally acknowledges the hunters, her response comes in the form of conditions. You can't hear the exact words from where you're processing plant fibers, but you recognize the gestures. She's reminding them about the last time they ventured beyond approved boundaries and came back empty-handed, forcing the women to dig for grubs and tubers for 3 straight days to keep everyone fed. Her finger jabs at the air, once, twice, 3 times. 3 conditions they must meet before she'll approve their expedition. Your younger sister sidles up beside you, trying to look casual as she watches the negotiation. "Why don't they just go anyway?" she whispers, still naive enough to think male bravado trumps female strategy. You almost laugh but catch yourself. Laughing at someone's ignorance breaks an unspoken rule about maintaining face, even among family, because, you explain, working the fibers between your palms. Who decides if their kill gets processed immediately or sits until it spoils? Who determines whether their children eat the choicest portions or gnaw on scraps? Who remembers which medicinal plants cure infection when that badly aimed spear inevitably causes a gash? Your sister's eyes widen as understanding dawns. The men might bring home the mammoth, but the women decide whether you feast or merely survive. It's a power balance so intricate that it took archaeologists decades to recognize it in the fossil record. They kept looking for signs of dominance in skeletal remains, evidence of violence, differences in nutrition, when the real power structures left traces in more subtle ways. The organization of living spaces, the distribution of specialized tools, the placement of buried goods. A commotion near the cave entrance draws your attention. One of the older women has discovered that someone moved her personal grinding stone. In your world, this is equivalent to someone hacking into your bank account. That stone has been shaped by her hands over 20 years, its surface worn into the perfect concave for processing her specific mixture of medicinal plants. Moving it isn't just inconvenient. It's a violation of personal property laws that predate written history by millennia. The accused is a teenage boy, gangly and perpetually hungry, who thought he could use it to crack nuts. The judgment comes swift and merciless. He's banned from the communal evening meal for 3 nights. He'll still eat. Nobody starves in a functioning band, but he'll receive his portions separately, coldly, without the social warmth that makes food taste better. His mother doesn't protest. She knows the law as well as anyone. Touch another woman's tools without permission. Face the consequences. This incident illustrates something crucial about your society's power structure. The women don't rule through violence or intimidation. They rule through resource control, social manipulation, and the collective enforcement of traditions that stretch back to time immemorial. When anthropologist Maria Gimbutas proposed her theories about prehistoric matriarchal societies in the 1970s, male academics scoffed. How could women maintain power without physical dominance? They'd clearly never watched a grandmother bring a hulking hunter to his knees with nothing more than a raised eyebrow and the threat of burned meat for a week. The moon hangs full and silver above the canyon, and you feel the familiar cramping that signals your body's monthly rebellion. Without fanfare, you gather your bleeding supplies, soft moss, absorbent plant fibers, and the special clay that helps mask the scent from predators, and make your way to the red tent. Well, it's not actually red, and it's more of a lean-to than a tent. But every woman in your band knows its purpose the moment they see smoke rising from its separate fire pit. Your arrival at the menstrual shelter triggers no disgust or shame, emotions that won't be attached to periods for thousands of years. Instead, the 2 women already there greet you with knowing smiles and shift to make room near the best spot by the fire. One passes you a tea that tastes like boiled bark and forgotten dreams, but it numbs the worst of the cramps within minutes. The recipe is so secret that even thinking about sharing it with men would probably cause spontaneous combustion. Or at least, that's what your grandmother claims. This monthly isolation isn't the punishment future societies will make it seem. In fact, you've been looking forward to it for days. Here in the bleeding shelter, the most profound laws of female power are taught, practiced, and enforced. No hunting duties, no hauling water, no wrestling toddlers away from poisonous plants. Just you, your fellow bleeders, and 3 to 5 days of what anthropologists would eventually recognize as the world's first institutionalized women's retreat. Did you hear about Bright River Band? Asked the woman grinding ochre into powder, her movements practiced and hypnotic. Their young women tried to hide their blood time to keep gathering with the others. The spirits cursed their entire summer harvest. Not a single blackberry ripened within walking distance of their caves. You nod sagely. Though privately you suspect the failed berry crop had more to do with the late frost everyone experienced that year. Still, the story serves its purpose. The blood laws exist for reasons both practical and mystical. On the practical side, wandering the wilderness while bleeding increases your chances of attracting predators, and not the kind you can chase away with a sharp stick. Bears, wolves, and big cats can smell blood from distances that would make your head spin if you understood measurements in miles. The mystical reasoning runs deeper. Your people believe, no, really, that women's bleeding time connects them to forces that make strong hunters weep like babies. The fact that you bleed for days without dying marks you as something beyond normal human experience. Men who accidentally encounter menstruating women report headaches, failed hunts, and tools that break without reason. Historians still argue whether these were psychosomatic responses to deeply ingrained taboos, or whether prehistoric women deliberately reinforced these beliefs to guarantee their monthly peace. Your grandmother's sister, the oldest woman still cycling, holds court near the shelter's rear wall. She's teaching the younger girls about the real power of blood time, the visions. When your body opens to release the unused life, she explains, her voice low and rhythmic, other things can enter, dreams, knowledge, sometimes. If you're very quiet and very lucky, the voices of the grandmothers who came before. Modern science would explain the heightened emotional states and vivid dreams of menstruation through hormonal fluctuations. Your people explain it through spirit language, but the practical result remains the same. Major band decisions often wait until the senior women emerge from the blood shelter with their visions properly interpreted. Last winter, it was a blood time vision that warned of the coming blizzard 3 days before the temperature dropped. The band survived while others, who lacked this supernatural weather forecasting system, lost members to the cold. You settle into the familiar rhythm of isolation, without the constant demands of daily survival. Your mind wanders into spaces usually too dangerous to explore. You think about the boy from the Willow Creek Band who made eyes at you during the last gathering. You ponder whether your daughter shows signs of inheriting your grandmother's plant knowledge. You even dare to imagine what life might be like if women's blood time powers were recognized and celebrated rather than hidden away, then laugh at such an impossible thought. The blood laws seem restrictive to outsiders, but you understand their true function. They give women regular, sanctioned breaks from labor. They create spaces for knowledge transfer without male interference. They provide cover for women to meet, plan, and make decisions that shape the band's future. Most importantly, they establish women's bodies as sources of power rather than weakness. Every month, you demonstrate that you can bleed without dying, suffer without breaking, and emerge renewed. If that's not magic, you don't know what is. Your cousin's belly has grown round as a full moon, and with it, her status has shifted into something approaching divine. She no longer gathers firewood or processes hides. These tasks would offend the spirits growing within her. Instead, she sits on the fur-covered platform reserved for pregnant women, nibbling the choicest cuts of liver, while the rest of you pretend not to notice the envy gnawing at your own bellies. The pregnancy laws are older than memory, carved into the backbone of survival itself. You watch her accept offerings from nervous relatives, a perfect shell, a rare blue feather, the tender heart of a fresh kill. Each gift serves as insurance, a desperate hope that when her child arrives safely, she'll remember who showed proper respect. The alternative, a woman who recalls your stinginess during her sacred time, can poison family relations for generations. Your own mother still refuses to share herb knowledge with a cousin who brought only dried berries during a difficult pregnancy 20 winters ago. The protection protocols surrounding pregnant women would make modern security details look amateur. She's never alone, never without food, never allowed near anything considered spiritually dangerous. Last week, warriors returning from a raid had to wait 3 days before entering the main camp because blood violence and pregnancy cannot occupy the same space. The men grumbled, but quietly. Loud complaints about pregnancy laws tend to result in mysterious hunting accidents. She's carrying differently this time, your aunt observes, squinting at your cousin's silhouette against the afternoon sky. Higher, more to the left, that means a daughter. The old women nod agreement, already planning which skills they'll teach this unborn girl, which secrets she'll inherit. Sons matter for hunting and protection, but daughters carry the knowledge forward. They remember which roots cure fever, how to read weather in the flight patterns of birds, where the sacred ochre can be gathered without angering the earth. Your cousin shifts uncomfortably, and immediately 3 women rush to adjust her sitting furs. This hypervigilance isn't mere kindness, it's law, encoded in terror. Every woman knows the stories of bands that grew casual about pregnancy protection. The Salt Flats people, who let their pregnant women continue heavy work. They lost 3 mothers and 5 babies in a single season. The Canyon Runners, who allowed pregnant women near weapons. Their children were born weak, prone to fits, unable to properly grip tools. Modern archaeologists puzzle over burial sites where pregnant women rest, surrounded by extraordinary grave goods, jewelry, tools, food offerings that surpass even high-status males. They theorize about goddess worship or fertility cults, missing the simpler truth. Pregnancy transforms you into something temporarily sacred because everyone's survival depends on your success. One woman dying in childbirth doesn't just remove her from the breeding pool. It traumatizes daughters who might refuse their own pregnancies, terrorizes sisters whose bodies clench in sympathetic fear, creates a cascade of demographic disaster. The pregnancy laws extend beyond physical protection into realms that would make modern legal systems jealous in their complexity. Your cousin cannot eat certain animals. Their spirits might confuse the baby's developing soul. She cannot cross running water without specific rituals. The flow might carry away the child's strength. She cannot look upon violence, death, or copulating animals. These sites imprint on the unborn in ways that manifest years later. Whether these restrictions actually protect babies or simply give frightened communities an illusion of control. Historians still argue. What matters is that breaking them brings consequences no one dares risk. A younger woman, barely past her first blood, makes the mistake of complaining about the unfairness of pregnancy privileges within earshot of the elders. The silence that follows could freeze flame. Your grandmother's sister, keeper of birth histories, begins reciting names. Snowflower died pushing out her 3rd child. The baby stuck sideways. Ravenwing bled rivers after birth. Gone before sunset. Little Shell. Fever took her 5 days after delivering twins. The litany continues. Name after name of women who paid the ultimate price for continuing life. The complainer shrinks with each name, understanding dawning. The pregnancy laws aren't favoritism. They're desperate attempts to tilt merciless odds. In a world without hospitals, antibiotics, or cesarean sections, every pregnancy is a dice roll with death. The elaborate restrictions, the reverent treatment, the fearsome taboos, they're all just ways of begging the universe for mercy, of saying, please, not this one, not this time. Your cousin catches your eye and smiles, serene in her temporary godhood. She knows, as you know, as every woman knows, that these 9 months of reverence balance against a lifetime of blood, milk, and sacrifice. The laws that protect her now will demand repayment in years of nursing, teaching, worrying, and the 1,000 daily deaths of motherhood. But for now, she sits cushioned and cosseted, gathering strength for the battle ahead, while the rest of you enforce the ancient laws that might, just might, bring her through alive. The morning mist clings to the valley like smoke from yesterday's fires, and you lead your gathering party toward the Grove of Whispers, a place where men's footprints mean death. Not metaphorical death, not social death, but the kind where your body feeds ravens while your sisters sing curses over your bones. The boundary markers are subtle if you don't know what to look for. 3 white stones arranged in a triangle, scratch marks on certain trees that look random to untrained eyes, and the way birds fall silent when you cross the invisible line into female territory, your niece, on her first sanctioned gathering trip, whispers nervously, "What if they follow us anyway?" You almost pity her innocence. She hasn't yet learned that the gathering territories are protected by something stronger than physical boundaries. They're guarded by the collective fury of every woman who's ever had her secret foraging spots revealed. Last spring, a young hunter from the River Bend band thought he'd impress his friends by sneaking into a women's mushroom grove. They found him 3 days later, alive but changed. He couldn't or wouldn't speak about what happened, but he never hunted again. Now he sits by the fire, weaving baskets with shaking hands. The grove spreads before you like nature's own pharmacy, each plant in its proper place, tended by generations of women who understood that some knowledge is too dangerous to share freely. Here grows the herb that brings dreams when dried and burned, but nightmares if prepared wrong. There clusters the flower that eases childbirth pain or stops a pregnancy if taken early enough. These aren't just plants, they're power, and power this raw requires careful guarding. You watch your daughters disperse among the trees, each seeking their assigned treasures. They know the rules. Take only what's needed. Leave offerings for what's taken. And never, never speak of specific locations outside the sisterhood. The punishment for revealing a gathering spot to men isn't death, but it might as well be. Social exile from female spaces means no access to medicinal knowledge, no support during childbirth, no sharing of the foods that only women know how to make palatable. You'd survive, technically, but as something less than fully human. Why can't men know about these places? Your niece asks. Carefully plucking berries that look identical to the poisonous variety growing just yards away. The fact that she can tell the difference, a skill taught through years of careful observation, partially answers her own question. But you elaborate anyway, speaking truths that anthropologists won't uncover for millennia. Because, you explain, sorting roots with practiced efficiency. Men would take everything. They see a productive hunting ground. They strip it bare and move on. They find a good flint source. They mine it until nothing remains. It's not evil. It's how they're trained to think. Quick strikes, maximum gain. Trust in mobility. You gesture at the carefully maintained grove around you. This requires patience they don't cultivate. We've been harvesting here since my grandmother's grandmother's time, and there's more growing now than when she started. The genius of the female gathering territories lies not just in their secrecy, but in their management. You practice what future ecologists will call sustainable harvesting, though you simply think of it as not being stupid. Take all the medicinal bark from a tree, and it dies. Take small strips from many trees, and they all survive to provide more. Gather every edible bulb, and next spring you'll find empty ground. Leave the smallest to grow, and your daughters will never hunger. A rustling in the undergrowth makes everyone freeze. Your hand finds the obsidian knife at your belt. Not that it would help much against a bear, but the weight comforts you. Instead, a doe steps into the clearing, regards your group with liquid eyes, then calmly begins browsing. The animals know this place too, understand its sanctuary status. No hunting happens here, ever. Even if a magnificent stag presented itself, antlers gleaming with promise, no woman would break the covenant. the gathering grounds a sacred space, as inviolate as any temple that will ever be built. Your eldest daughter returns with her basket full of the purple roots that, when properly prepared, ease the breathing sickness that claims elders every winter. She's also brought back news, fresh scratches on the eastern boundary trees, made with a man's heavier hand. Someone has been testing the borders, seeing how close they can get without triggering consequences. The women exchange glances, already knowing who'll volunteer for guard duty tonight. The Moon Sisters. They call themselves women past childbearing whose husbands have died, free to enforce territorial laws with enthusiasm that borders on gleeful. As you prepare to leave, baskets full of treasures that would make men weep with envy if they understood their value. You pause at the grove's heart. Here stands the grandmother tree, an oak so old its trunk could shelter your entire band. In its hollow, wrapped in doeskin, rest the gathering songs, not written, for writing doesn't exist yet, but held in patterns of knots and shells that preserve the locations of every significant plant within a 3-day walk. This is your real inheritance, worth more than any amount of meat or hides, and it will remain yours, protected by laws written in fear and enforced with brutal efficiency, until the day women no longer need secret spaces to ensure their survival. Lightning splits the sky as your sister goes into labor, and with the storm comes the complicated question of who this child will belong to. Not in the way future societies will think of ownership. No one owns children here, any more than you own the wind, but in terms of the intricate web of rights, responsibilities, and privileges that will shape this infant's entire life. Your grandmother sits at your sister's head, whispering the lineage songs that will tie this new soul to its proper place in the world's fabric. The baby emerges slick and screaming into your waiting hands, and immediately the negotiations begin. Your sister's mate hovers nearby, permitted to witness but not touch, not yet. First, the women must decide, in your world. Fathers are pleasant additions to a child's life, like honey to bitter tea, but the real structure flows through female lines. This squalling infant will know its mother, grandmother, and aunts as fixed stars in its sky. The father, he's more like a seasonal visitor, important but not essential. Your cousin from the wolf clan clears her throat meaningfully. She lost her own baby to winter fever 2 moons ago, and her breasts still ache with unused milk. The unspoken offer hangs in the air. She could nurse this child, becoming its milk mother, earning rights that stretch far beyond simple feeding. Your sister, exhausted but alert, considers. Accepting would bind the 2 family lines closer, create obligations that would last generations. Refusing might seem selfish, ungrateful for past favors owed. The child stays with blood, your grandmother declares, ending the speculation. But staying with blood doesn't mean what outsiders might think. This baby will sleep wherever warmth and milk are available. It will be disciplined by whoever catches it misbehaving. It will learn from anyone willing to teach. The difference lies in the deeper currents, who speaks for the child in councils, who arranges its future marriages, who passes down the secret names that carry power. Modern anthropologists love to argue about whether prehistoric societies practiced matrilineal or patrilineal descent, as if these ancient people cared about neat academic categories. The truth, lived daily in your bones, is messier. Children belong to their mother's line for some purposes, their fathers for others, and to the entire band when survival demands it. The laws governing these relationships would fill libraries if anyone could write them down. But they exist instead as understood truths, as natural and unquestionable as breathing. A week later, the baby's father formally requests recognition. He brings gifts, a perfectly knapped spear point, the pelt of a winter fox, 3 strings of shell beads that took months to drill and polish. More importantly, he brings witnesses to swear he's never struck a woman in anger, never hoarded food while children hungered, never broken the sacred trusts that mark a man worth claiming. Your sister accepts his offerings, and with that, he gains the right to teach this child his clan's hunting songs, to paint protective symbols on its face during ceremonies, to feel pride when it accomplishes something noteworthy. But watch what happens when resources grow scarce. The baby cries with hunger during a lean spell, and suddenly father's rights evaporate like morning dew. The women close ranks, channeling every scrap of food toward those who can create more life. The men understand this law in their bones. When survival teeters on the edge, children flow toward their mothers like water finding its level. Pride means nothing to empty bellies. Your 5-year-old son provides a living example of how these custody laws play out. Technically, he could claim belonging to his father's elk clan through the ceremonial marks he received last summer. But when he scraped his knee yesterday, he ran to you. When nightmares wake him, he seeks your warmth. When he's hungry, tired, or scared, the patrilineal connections might as well be smoke. Real custody, the kind measured in tears wiped and bellies filled, remains firmly in female hands. The implications stretch beyond individual families. Your band's entire political structure rests on these custody laws. Leadership passes not from father to son, but from mother's brother to sister's son. A system that seems bizarre until you realize it guarantees biological connection. A woman always knows her children are hers. A man claiming fatherhood, he's making an educated guess. Building power structures on uncertainty would be like constructing shelters on quicksand. Historians still argue whether these matrilineal systems represented female dominance or simply practical adaptation to biological realities. The debate misses the point entirely. In your world, custody laws exist to ensure children survive, knowledge transfers successfully, and social bonds remain strong enough to weather crisis. Whether that counts as matriarchy or not depends on definitions that won't be invented for 30,000 years. What matters now is that every child knows where it belongs, every mother knows her rights, and every father understands his privileges depend entirely on female goodwill. The autumn gathering brings 3 bands together at the river confluence, and the air thrums with possibility. Young men strut like peacocks who haven't evolved yet, displaying their hunting prowess through elaborate dances that would make a nightclub look tame. But the real power plays happen in the shadows, where women orchestrate the mating game with ruthless precision. Your daughter, now 16 summers old, sits with studied indifference as suitors circle like hopeful wolves. She knows, you've made sure she knows, that choosing wrong could mean decades of misery with no escape clause. You watch her perform the rejection rituals with pride that borders on savage. The boy from Marsh Band approaches with gift offerings, fresh meat, worked hide, a necklace of pierced elk teeth. Your daughter accepts them graciously, then places them in the communal pile, the universal signal that says thanks, but I'd rather mate with a rabid badger. He retreats with dignity intact, understanding the law. Rejected gifts become band property, payment for the privilege of shooting his shot and missing. The real entertainment comes when some thick-skulled youth decides to persist after rejection. Your nephew, blessed with muscle but cursed with the cognitive capacity of tree bark, approaches a girl who's already turned him down twice. The women's response is swift and coordinated, within moments. Every female between 8 and 80 is pointing and laughing, not cruel laughter, but the specific pitch that shrivels male ego like salted slugs. He'll be twice told for the rest of his life, a cautionary tale about respecting female choice. Why do we get to choose? Your younger daughter asks, watching the proceedings with the fascination of someone who'll face these decisions soon. You settle beside her, ready to explain laws so ancient they predate speech itself. In the animal world, females often choose mates based on displays of fitness, bright feathers, elaborate dances, victorious battles. Humans complicated this system with consciousness, but the underlying principle remains. Those who bear the reproductive costs make the reproductive choices. Your grandmother joins the conversation, her eyes twinkling with memories of her own youth. Men think strength matters most, she says, gesturing at the young hunters showing off their scars. But we know better. Strong men who eat all the best food while pregnant women starve. Useless. Skilled hunters who disappear for weeks without warning. Dangerous. Pretty boys who can't tell poisonous plants from medicine. She makes a throat-cutting gesture that needs no translation. The selection process involves layers of evaluation that would impress modern HR departments. Physical compatibility matters. You need someone whose body works well with yours for the intimate realities of cave life. But social compatibility matters more. Will his family share resources during lean times? Does his mother know valuable skills she'll teach your daughters? Can his sisters be trusted with secrets? Marriage isn't just between two people. It's an alliance between kinship networks that can mean survival or starvation. Your eldest daughter demonstrates advanced selection strategies. She's been courted by 2 brothers from the mountain band, both exceptional hunters, both easy on the eyes. Instead of choosing immediately, she's played them against each other for an entire season. The competition has driven both to greater heights of achievement, benefiting the entire band with extra meat and improved tools. Eventually, she'll choose one, probably the younger who shows more flexibility in thinking. But for now, she enjoys the power of keeping them guessing. The darker side of selection laws emerges when someone mentions the ridge people, who tried to institute forced pairings based on skill complementarity. Their band dissolved within 2 generations, women fleeing to groups that honored choice, men left with empty caves and emptier futures. The lesson was clear. Remove female selection rights, and society crumbles faster than sun-dried clay in rain. A commotion near the river draws attention. A young woman from the forest band has just performed the ultimate rejection. She's cut her hair short and painted her face with the symbols that declare not seeking. It's a nuclear option, removing herself from the mating market entirely for at least 1 full season. The gossiping starts immediately. Is she recovering from secret heartbreak? Dedicated to shamanic training? Simply exhausted by persistent suitors? Whatever her reasons, the law protects her choice absolutely. Any man who approaches her now faces exile-level punishment. As darkness falls and the formal courtship dances begin, you remind your daughters of the final, most crucial law. They can always say no, even after accepting gifts, even after preliminary agreements, even after physical intimacy begins. The right to refusal remains absolute. This isn't modern feminism transplanted to ancient times. It's practical survival strategy. Women who feel trapped make dangerous decisions. They flee into the wilderness, attempt infanticide, poison slowly over years. Better to ensure every pairing starts with genuine willingness. Your daughter makes her choice as the moon rises. A quiet young man from Riverband who spent the evening teaching children to nap flint rather than showing off. Smart girl. The flashy ones burn bright and die young. The quiet ones who notice which plants you gather. Remember your grandmother's name and offer help without being asked. Those are the ones who'll still be bringing home meat when your joints ache and your hair grays. The scream that pierces the pre-dawn quiet isn't human. It's the sound your cousin makes when the birthing fever takes hold. Somewhere between animal and spirit, you rush to the medicine woman's shelter, where she's already preparing the sacred interventions that might save both mother and child. The healer's laws are absolute here. No men, no children. No one who hasn't been properly initiated into the mysteries of flesh and herb. Your uncle hovers outside the boundary, tears streaming down his weathered face. But he knows better than to cross the line marked by owl feathers and ochre paint. Inside, the medicine woman commands with an authority that makes hunt leaders look like squabbling children. She is 43 summers old, ancient by your standards, and carries knowledge worth more than all the mammoth ivory in existence. Her apprentices move like shadows, fetching water heated to precise temperatures, crushing herbs in proportions that took decades to perfect. One girl, barely past her first blood, makes the mistake of reaching for the wrong plant. The medicine woman's staff cracks across her knuckles hard enough to leave marks. There's no room for error when death circles like a hungry vulture. Tell me again, the healer demands, her fingers reading your cousin's swollen belly like a hunter reads tracks. When did the pains begin? What did she eat yesterday? Has she seen any omens? The questions seem random to the uninitiated, but each answer adjusts the treatment plan. Historians still argue whether prehistoric medicine was pure superstition or contained genuine healing knowledge. They've never watched a medicine woman save a breech baby using techniques that won't be discovered by male doctors for another 30,000 years. The apprenticeship laws surrounding medical knowledge make modern medical schools look positively casual. Girls chosen for healing training, and it's always girls, always, begin their education at first blood. They spend years grinding herbs just to learn their textures, seasons observing before they're allowed to touch a patient, decades assisting before they can make independent decisions. The knowledge transfers through female lines exclusively, encoded in songs that sound like nonsense to untrained ears, but contain precise pharmaceutical instructions. Your daughter shows talent for the healing arts, but you're not sure you want this life for her. Medicine women hold power second only to clan mothers, but they pay prices that would break weaker souls. They can never refuse a call for help, even from enemy bands. They must remain neutral in conflicts, treating injured raiders with the same care as beloved grandmothers. Most isolating of all, they're forbidden from sharing certain knowledge even with their own families. The burden of secrets ages them prematurely. Every medicine woman you've known developed white hair and deep wrinkles decades before her sisters. A young hunter from the valley people learned this lesson brutally last winter. He'd been courting the medicine woman's apprentice and convinced her to share the location of the sacred painbark trees. Whether he was genuinely curious or planning to trade the knowledge, no one ever found out. The healer's justice came swift and terrible. He survived, technically, but whatever they did left him unable to speak without stuttering, his hands shaking too badly to hold a spear. The apprentice? She vanished into the night, her name forbidden, her existence erased from memory. The birthing continues through the morning. Your cousin's cries rhythmic as waves. The medicine woman sends you to fetch water from the moon pool, a natural spring where water bubbles up cold and mineral rich, reserved exclusively for healing purposes. 3 women guard it day and night, ensuring no animals pollute it, no men discover its location. The punishment for contaminating healing water makes exile look like a gentle scolding. 2 summers ago, children playing near the pool accidentally knocked in dirt and debris. Their families had to provide the medicine women with goods and services for an entire season as compensation. Between contractions, the healer teaches, unable to waste any opportunity for knowledge transfer. See how her pulse flutters here? She guides your hand to your cousin's neck. That means the baby fights against coming. We need bitter root to relax her passages, but not too much or the bleeding won't stop after. The measurements are exact. A finger width of root, steeped in water, heated until bubbles rise like fish eggs, administered in sips between pains. Too little and mother and baby die in agony. Too much, and they die in different agony. No wonder the healers guard their knowledge like bears guard cubs. Finally, as the sun reaches its peak, the baby emerges in a rush of fluid and triumph. But the medicine woman's work has just begun. She packs the bleeding with moss prepared months in advance, monitors the new mother's breathing, checks the infant's color and responsiveness. Each action follows protocols refined over generations, knowledge paid for in blood and grief. When both patients stabilize, she finally relaxes, accepting the ritual payment, not in goods, which would insult the sacred nature of her calling, but in promises of future service, binding the saved family to the healer's network forever. Later, as your cousin sleeps with her healthy baby, you ask the medicine woman why men are so thoroughly excluded from healing knowledge. She laughs, but it's bitter as the roots she prescribes. Men heal differently, she explains. They see injury. They want to fix it immediately, cut it out, burn it closed, force the body to submit. Women understand that healing is conversation, not conquest. We listen to what the body wants, coax it back to balance. Besides, her eyes glitter with old angers. Would you trust someone who's never bled for days without dying to understand how bodies truly work? The eternal flame flickers in its stone basin, casting shadows that dance across the cave walls like ancient memories. You've been chosen as this moon's firekeeper, and the responsibility weighs heavier than a bull mammoth's tusk. Your grandmother's hands shake as she passes you the sacred branch, the one that hasn't touched ground in living memory, the one that transfers authority over humanity's most precious resource. Break this trust. Let the flame die, and the punishment doesn't bear thinking about. Fire-keeping runs through female bloodlines like underground rivers, secret and essential. Men might joke about women always being cold, always hovering near the flames, but they miss the deeper truth. You control fire because you understand patience in ways that hunters, trained for explosive action, simply can't. Maintaining an eternal flame requires the kind of steady attention that comes from grinding seeds for hours, watching babies for days, tracking the slow changes of seasons across years. Your training began when you were barely walking. Though you didn't recognize it as training then, your mother would set you to watching the coals while she worked, rewarding vigilance with honey-sweetened tea, punishing inattention with hunger. By 5 summers, you could read the flame's moods, when it needed feeding, when it was gorging on too much fuel, when dampness threatened its survival. By 10, you knew the songs that supposedly strengthened fire's spirit, though really, they were mnemonic devices for remembering which woods burned longest, hottest, cleanest. The real education came after your first blood, when the elder firekeepers finally explained why this knowledge stayed locked in female hands. Men discovered fire, your great-aunt told you, her face half lit by the flames she'd tended for 40 years. Lightning struck, forest burned. Some clever ancestor carried a burning branch home, but women learned to keep it alive. That's the harder magic. Tonight, 3 young girls watch you work, absorbing lessons through observation. You show them how to bank coals for overnight survival, how to read wind patterns that might threaten the flame, how to maintain multiple fire sources in case one fails. They don't yet understand that they're learning more than practical skills. They're inheriting a power structure that predates formal leadership by millennia. Control fire, control cooking, control cooking, control nutrition, control nutrition, control who thrives and who merely survives. A commotion outside breaks your concentration, always dangerous when tending flame. Your brother's son, barely into manhood, swaggers in demanding a torch for some midnight hunting expedition. The request is so absurd, so fundamentally against protocol, that you almost laugh, almost. Instead, you fix him with the stare that's ended 1,000 male presumptions. Who gave you permission to approach the eternal flame? Your voice carries the authority of every firekeeper before you. He bristles, full of young male pride. I need fire. You have fire. Give it to me. The simplicity of his worldview would be charming if it weren't so dangerous. Behind you, your apprentices tense, ready to enforce the law with thrown stones if necessary. The boy doesn't realize he's committing sacrilege equivalent to spitting on the ancestors' graves. Fire is given, never taken. You recite the ancient law. Request through proper channels, with proper offerings at proper times. You don't mention that proper channels means convincing his mother to ask you. Proper offerings means contributing a moon's worth of fuel-gathering labor, and proper times means definitely not in the middle of the night when the flame is most vulnerable. Let him figure that out through painful trial and error, like every male before him. He storms out, pride wounded but body intact, a better outcome than some receive. Last winter, raiders from the mountain people tried to steal fire rather than negotiate for it. The women's response was swift and coordinated, not violent. Violence is men's language. Instead, every fire in the territory was carefully, simultaneously extinguished. For 3 days, both bands shivered in the cold, eating raw meat, suffering. The raiders learned that stolen fire brings no warmth, and negotiations resumed with proper respect. The deeper mysteries of firekeeping involve knowledge that borders on alchemy. Your lineage knows how to create colored flames for ceremonies, green from copper-rich stones, blue from salt gathered at specific tidal pools, purple from combinations that took generations to perfect. You know which smoke drives away biting insects, which preserves meat longest, which carries messages to the spirits most effectively. This pharmaceutical knowledge, disguised as spiritual practice, gives firekeepers influence that extends far beyond simple warmth. As dawn approaches, your relief arrives, your mother's sister, old enough that her joints crack like breaking twigs, but still sharp enough to maintain the flame through her shift. The transfer ritual is precise. You sing the lineage song together, pass the sacred branch without letting it touch ground, recite the tally of wood remaining, She inspects your work with eyes that miss nothing, finally nodding approval. Only then can you leave, exhausted but proud, knowing you've maintained humanity's most essential bargain with the universe for another night. Your daughter waits outside, eager to hear about your shift. She's years away from taking her own turn at firekeeping, but the fascination burns bright in her eyes. "Why can't men learn the fire secrets?" she asks. A question every girl poses eventually. You give her the traditional answer about patience and attention, but the real truth runs deeper. Men can learn. They're not fundamentally incapable, but teaching them would break the careful balance of power that keeps your society stable. When women control fire, men must negotiate rather than demand. They must contribute rather than simply consume. They must respect rather than presume. And that respect, more than any flame, is what keeps your people alive. The sound of stone striking stone echoes across the work area as you shape what will become the band's finest spear point. Your hands, scarred from years of napping, move with precision that makes the men stop and stare, partly in admiration, mostly in confusion. They've been told since childhood that weapon making belongs to the masculine realm. Yet here you sit, creating tools that surpass their best efforts. The cognitive dissonance almost visibly hurts their heads. Your specialty is the tiny, wicked arrowheads used for bird hunting, a skill that requires fingers nimble enough to work with pieces smaller than fingernails and patience enough to accept a 90% failure rate. The men prefer making hand axes and heavy spear points, tools that match their self-image as mighty hunters. They don't realize that your women's work feeds the band more consistently than their grand mammoth hunts. Birds are always around, mammoths are not. The tool-making laws evolved from practical reality rather than ideology. Women's tools, scrapers, awls, needles, grinding stones, require different qualities than hunting implements. Precision over power, durability over sharpness, multiple functions over single purpose. But somewhere along the way, these categories blurred. You learned blade making from your mother, who learned from hers. Each generation adding refinements the men never see because they're too proud to admit women might know something about weapons. "That's not how grandfather taught us," your nephew complains, watching you thin a blade's edge to translucency. He's not wrong. His grandfather's technique produces serviceable tools that do their job. But your method, refined by generations of women who understood that lighter tools mean less fatigue during long gathering expeditions, creates implements that sing through the air. The boy's confusion stems from believing there's only one right way to knap stone, when really there are as many methods as there are hands to hold the hammerstone. Your daughter sits beside you, learning through observation and muscle memory. Her first attempts are laughably bad, chunks of wasted flint that would make a master napper weep. But she's starting to understand the stone's internal structure, how to read the fracture lines, when to strike with power, and when to coax with gentle pressure. More importantly, she's learning the politics of tool ownership that govern your world. The rules seem simple on the surface. Makers own their tools until traded, gifted, or inherited. But layers of complexity hide beneath. Women's tools can't be touched by men without permission. A law that seems arbitrary until you realize it prevents husbands from trading away implements their wives need for survival. Men's hunting gear follows different patterns, communal during hunts, personal between them. The overlap creates constant negotiations that require delicate social navigation. A disturbance ripples through the work area. Someone has discovered that tools have gone missing, 3 pristine scrapers and a set of bone needles that took a moon to craft. Theft is almost unknown in your band. Communal survival depends on trust. But the evidence is clear. The tools are gone. And someone saw an unfamiliar figure near the storage area last night. The response will be swift and merciless. But first, ownership must be established beyond doubt. Your grandmother takes charge of the investigation, her memory for objects rivaling her recall of genealogies. She identifies each missing tool by its maker's distinctive style, the way one woman always leaves a slight curve in her scraper handles, how another creates needles with heads just large enough for sinew but too small for plant fibers. These makers' marks are better than any written signature, encoding not just identity but skill level, age, and even emotional state during creation. The thief, when caught, turns out to be a young woman from a neighboring band, desperate to prove her worth for marriage negotiations. The tools she stole were specifically women's implements, chosen to demonstrate skills she hadn't actually mastered. The judgment comes down harsh. She must create replacement tools under supervision, each one approved by its original maker. However long that takes, worse. Word will spread to other bands about her deception. Marriage prospects just became as rare as honest traders. The incident reinforces why tool laws exist. In a world where a good needle means the difference between warm clothing and freezing, where a proper scraper determines whether hides rot or preserve perfectly, tools carry life or death weight. The gendered divisions might seem arbitrary to future anthropologists, but they ensure specialized knowledge passes to those most likely to use it. Women teach daughters to make gathering implements because daughters will gather. Men teach sons to craft hunting tools because sons will hunt. When someone crosses those lines, like you with your weapon making, it requires exceptional skill to overcome skepticism. As evening approaches, you finish the spear point, holding it up to catch the dying light. It's a masterpiece of controlled fracturing. Each flake scar placed precisely to create an edge that could shave hair if anyone cared about such things. You'll trade it to the best hunter, not for meat. You can get that anywhere, but for acknowledgement. Each exceptional tool you create chips away at the rigid categories that claim women can't make weapons. Men can't craft needles. Change comes slowly in a world where tradition means survival, but it comes nonetheless, one perfect stone at a time. The morning's hunt returns with a young doe, and immediately the complex machinery of food distribution grinds into motion. You watch your aunt, the band's senior distribution authority, survey the carcass with the calculating eye of someone who must transform one deer into 30 satisfied stomachs. Her decisions in the next hour will reinforce alliances, settle debts, and potentially create feuds that last generations. No pressure. The hunters stand back respectfully as the women take charge. This transition of power is so ingrained that historians often miss it entirely, focusing on the masculine drama of the hunt while ignoring the feminine politics of the feast. Your uncle might have thrown the killing spear, but now his role is finished. What happens next, who eats what, when, and how much, belongs to the careful mathematics that only women master. Your aunt begins with the liver, still warm and glistening. Traditional law says it goes to pregnant women first, then nursing mothers, then children, then elders, but laws are starting points, not end points. She cuts a portion for your pregnant cousin, yes, but also sets aside a piece for the widow whose son died last winter, acknowledging grief with nutrients. Another portion goes to the young woman who discovered the berry patch that saved everyone during the late spring hunger. Food is currency, and your aunt is the central bank. The heart? Your daughter asks, already learning to read the distribution patterns. Hearts carry special significance, courage, strength, the essence of the animal spirit. Your aunt considers, then divides it between the young hunter who made his first kill today and the medicine woman who saved his sister from fever last fall. The boy beams with pride. The healer nods acceptance. Both understand they've been woven tighter into the web of mutual obligation. The real artistry comes with the less desirable portions. Anyone can distribute tenderloin in ways that make people happy. It takes genius to hand out intestines, hooves, and tail in patterns that reinforce social bonds rather than strain them. Your aunt manages this by reading the invisible ledger every woman carries, who helped during her daughter's difficult birth, who shared pine nuts when her family's cash spoiled, who defended her grandson when older boys tried to exclude him from training. A younger woman makes the mistake of reaching for a portion before it's been assigned. The silence that follows could freeze marrow. She withdraws her hand, face burning with shame, understanding she's committed a breach that will follow her for months. Food distribution laws aren't just about nutrition. They're about acknowledging that individual survival depends on collective cooperation. Taking out of turn says you value yourself above the group. A message as dangerous as admitting you've been hoarding resources. Your grandmother tells stories of bands that tried different systems. The cliff people let whoever killed the animal control distribution. Within 2 seasons, the strongest hunters had formed an alliance that starved out weaker members. The River Bend folk tried pure egalitarianism, every person getting exactly equal shares. They collapsed when no one felt motivated to excel. Knowing extra effort brought no extra recognition. Only the female-controlled distribution networks, with their complex calculations of need, merit, and social debt, create sustainable balance. The bones present their own distribution challenges. Marrow is almost pure fat, liquid gold in a world where calories mean survival. But bones also make tools, needles, ornaments. Your aunt must decide. Does the marrow go to the elder whose body struggles to maintain weight? Or do the bones go to the craftsman whose needle-making keeps everyone clothed? She chooses a middle path, cracking some bones for immediate consumption while setting aside the best for tool-making. Compromise is another form of genius. Children watch the entire process with desperate attention, learning algorithms they'll need to master for survival. Your son notices that his friend receives a larger portion and starts to complain before you silence him with a look. Later, privately, you'll explain that the friend's mother spent 3 days helping you gather medicine when he was sick with the coughing illness. Debts flow across generations in ways that simple equality could never capture. As the distribution concludes, patterns emerge that would fascinate economists if they could observe them. The best portions don't go to the most powerful, but to those who contribute most consistently to band survival. Steady providers outrank spectacular hunters. Women who share knowledge receive better cuts than those who hoard secrets. Children of generous mothers eat better than children of stingy ones, creating evolutionary pressure toward cooperation. The final test comes when your aunt realizes there's slightly less meat than anticipated. The deer was younger than it looked, or perhaps someone's portions were too generous. Without hesitation, she reduces her own family's share to make the numbers work. This isn't performative martyrdom, but calculated leadership. By taking less publicly, she earns the right to control more later. The food she doesn't eat today becomes social capital she can spend when it matters more. Your daughter helps clean up, careful to save every scrap for soup stock. Why do women always decide who eats what? She asks, echoing a question that threads through human history. You explain what your mother explained to you. Men excel at acquiring resources in dramatic bursts, but women excel at managing them across time. The hunter who kills a mammoth feels like a hero for a week, but the woman who makes that mammoth last through winter keeps everyone alive. Glory fades fast. Careful distribution echoes across generations. The bones speak tonight, clattering across the sacred throwing hide in patterns only your sister can read. She is the band's dream walker, the one who conversations with spirits, and her authority in these matters exceeds even the hunt leaders. The men shift uncomfortably as she prepares for the moon ritual. They're allowed to observe, but not participate, a reversal of power that makes them as nervous as rabbits in open ground. Your sister's training began when she was 7, the night she woke screaming about floods that arrived 3 days later. The old dream walker recognized the gift immediately, claiming her for apprenticeship before her parents could object. Not that they would have. Refusing a spirit-called child brings catastrophes that make floods look like gentle rain. For 20 years, she studied the language of omens, the grammar of visions, the delicate art of translating cosmic whispers into human action. The bones resist tonight, she murmurs, gathering them for another throw. This isn't theatre. You've seen her predictions save lives too many times to doubt. Last winter, she dreamed of yellow sickness and moved the band 2 days before a neighboring group fell ill, half their number dead within a moon. The summer before, her visions led hunters to a canyon where injured elk had gathered, providing meat for the lean months. Whether she truly speaks with spirits or simply reads patterns too subtle for normal consciousness, the results justify her status. The spiritual leadership laws surrounding women like your sister would fill volumes if anyone could write. She can interrupt any gathering, override any decision, demand resources for rituals that seem wasteful to pragmatic minds. In exchange, she accepts restrictions that would break weaker souls. She cannot marry. Her body belongs to the spirits. She cannot eat certain foods. They cloud the visions. She cannot refuse when called to interpret dreams, even if the caller is from an enemy band. Neutrality is the price of power. A young man makes the mistake of scoffing when the bones predict poor hunting to the south. Your sister doesn't argue or defend. She simply stares until he looks away, shamed by his own rudeness. Later, when southern hunters return empty-handed while northern expeditions succeed, his apology will be public and groveling. The spirits, everyone knows, have long memories and cruel senses of humor about skeptics. Bring the moon blood, your sister commands, and her apprentice hurries to fetch the sacred mixture. Only women who've ceased their monthly bleeding can handle it. Another law that places postmenopausal women at the center of spiritual power. The concoction smells like rotted flowers and old copper, but when painted on foreheads, it opens doors in the mind that usually stay barred. Historians still argue whether these prehistoric rituals used actual psychoactive substances or relied on suggestion and ritual. Having felt the world shimmer and breathe after moon blood application, you know which theory you believe. The deeper mysteries of female spiritual leadership involve knowledge that borders on dangerous. Your grandmother whispers about the time before, when women's magic grew so strong that men felt obsolete, unnecessary except as seed providers. The backlash, when it came, was violent enough to scatter bands across territories, break ancient alliances, create the careful balance your people maintain today. Now spiritual power is shared. Men have their hunt magic, their warrior societies, their own mysteries. But the fundamental forces, birth, death, dreams, healing, remain feminine domains. Your daughter shows disturbing signs of spirit calling. Last week, she mentioned dreaming about eagles 3 nights before a golden eagle died at your feet, its feathers now woven into the dreamwalker's staff. You hope the signs prove false. The life of a spirit woman is honored but hard, respected but lonely. You want grandchildren for her, a mate who makes her laugh, the simple pleasures that spirit-called women sacrifice for power. The ritual reaches its climax as your sister enters the dreaming trance. Her eyes roll back, showing only whites, and her voice drops 3 octaves to something that raises neck hair. The words that emerge aren't quite human language. They're older, deeper, the tongue that stones would speak if stones had voices. Her apprentice scrambles to record the utterances in knot patterns, capturing messages that will be interpreted over days of careful analysis. When she finally returns to normal consciousness, sweat pours down her face like she's run for miles. The immediate message is clear enough. Move camp within 3 sunrises. Danger approaches from the east. But the subtle meanings, the warnings hidden in metaphor and symbol, will require careful teasing out. This is why spiritual leadership can't be rushed or faked. Real visions leave traces, physical exhaustion, specific details that prove true, consistencies across time that no charlatan could maintain. As the gathering disperses, men hurrying to plan the camp move based on a woman's dreams. You reflect on the strangeness of power. Your sister could never lift a full-grown deer or throw a spear with killing force, but her words move entire populations, change hunting patterns, determine who lives and dies. The spiritual leadership laws don't create her power. They simply acknowledge what already exists, or in a world where invisible forces kill more surely than visible predators, those who can see the unseen become indispensable. The shell passes from hand to hand, following the secret route that only women know, carrying a message that will reshape 2 bands' futures. You recognize the pattern drilled into its surface. 3 holes means urgency. The red ochre staining indicates marriage negotiations. And the fact it came through the moon phase runners tells you discretion is paramount. Your daughter watches with fascination as you decode the message using the knot string key your grandmother taught you, each combination revealing another layer of meaning. This isn't mere gossip traveling the female network. It's intelligence that determines whether alliances form or shatter. The forest band has 3 sons reaching marriageable age, but their reputation for stinginess with food sharing makes them poor prospects. Meanwhile, the river people have daughters aplenty, but need connections to better hunting grounds. Your band sits in the middle, rich in territory, but lacking the population to defend it. The negotiations that unfold over the coming moons will be as complex as any treaty between nations, all orchestrated through women's invisible communication channels. Why don't the men handle marriage arrangements? Your niece asks. Still young enough to ask questions that would earn an adult woman pointed silence. You explain patiently. Men negotiate from positions of pride and stubbornness, turning every discussion into a dominance contest. Women negotiate from positions of practical benefit, understanding that successful marriages require more than strong backs and pretty faces. Besides, the men don't even know half these negotiations happen until the women present them with fait accompli arrangements that benefit everyone. The real power in the marriage networks lies not in arranging individual pairings, but in seeing the larger patterns. Your aunt, master weaver of social connections, maintains a mental map of bloodlines stretching back 5 generations and across 7 territories. She knows which combinations strengthen the band's position, which create dangerous obligations, which might produce children with the bleeding sickness or the bone weakness that plagued the mountain people into extinction. A runner arrives as the sun reaches its peak, breathless from her journey. She's traveled 2 days to deliver a counteroffer from the river people, and the shell she carries is warm from being clutched against her body. The message is complex: agreement on 2 marriages, but requests for additional hunting rights that would strain your own resources. More importantly, it contains a warning. The Canyon Band is also negotiating for the same daughters, offering exotic trade goods from the far south. Your grandmother calls an emergency council of senior women. They gather in the women's cave, where strategic discussions happen away from male ears and egos. The debate that follows would impress any diplomatic corps. Some argue for accepting the river people's terms to secure the alliance quickly. Others want to use the Canyon Band's interest to negotiate better terms. Your grandmother, ancient and clever, proposes a third option: arrange marriages with both bands, creating a 3-way alliance that leaves everyone obligated to everyone else. The logistics of the women's communication network boggle the mind when you really consider them. Messages travel faster through female channels than men on hunting expeditions, despite women being supposedly restricted by children and domestic duties. The secret lies in overlapping territories, gathering grounds where women from different bands accidentally meet, moonblood sanctuaries where information exchanges under sacred protection, trading posts where women barter goods and gossip with equal enthusiasm. You remember when the network saved your cousin's life. She'd married into the mountain band, but her new husband's family was slowly starving her, claiming food shortages while they ate well. Word traveled through 3 bands in less than a moon, and suddenly the mountain band found themselves mysteriously unable to trade for anything. No salt, no good flint, no winter furs. The embargo lasted until your cousin appeared at a gathering visibly well-fed. The women's network has teeth when it needs them. The marriage negotiations continue through the night, messages flying back and forth like bats at dusk. Each counter-proposal requires careful consideration of immediate benefits versus long-term consequences. Accept too little, and your daughters enter marriages where they'll be undervalued. Demand too much, and create resentments that poison relationships for generations. The sweet spot lies in arrangements where everyone feels they've won something while giving up something they can afford to lose. By dawn, the framework of an agreement emerges. 2 daughters will go to the river people, strengthening those bonds. 1 son will marry into the Canyon Band, establishing your group's first connection to the southern trade routes. In exchange, hunting territories will be adjusted, gathering rights expanded, and most cleverly, a joint moon ceremony established that brings all 3 bands together regularly, allowing the women to maintain their communication network openly rather than in secret. The men will be informed of their new marriages after the morning meal, when they're well-fed and amenable. They'll grumble about not being consulted, posture about their right to choose, then ultimately accept what the women have decided. Because deep down, even the most stubborn hunter knows that marriages arranged through the female network succeed at twice the rate of those based on male impulse and desire. Your daughter helps you prepare the confirmation shells, drilling the holes that indicate agreement, mixing the pigments that add layers of meaning. She's learning not just the mechanical skills, but the deeper lesson. Information is power, and controlling information flow means controlling society's shape. The marriage networks are just the most visible expression of a truth that governs your entire world. Women's supposed restrictions become strengths when properly leveraged. Your grandmother sits on the judgment stone, her white hair gleaming like frost in the morning sun, and the assembled bands fall silent with a respect that runs deeper than fear. At 63 summers, an age so advanced that most consider her partially spirit already, she embodies the final law of female power. When women outlive their fertility, they transform from life-givers to lawgivers, and their word becomes as final as death itself. The case before her is messy enough to make younger minds recoil. 2 brothers claim rights to the same woman after their elder brother's death. Traditional law says the woman goes to the next brother, keeping her children within the patriline. But this woman bore twins, and everyone knows twins bring special complications. They might be blessed or cursed, and only time reveals which. Plus, she's been secretly meeting with a man from another band, a relationship that predates her marriage, but never officially ended. Your grandmother listens to each testimony with eyes half closed, though you know she misses nothing. The brothers speak of their rights, their needs, their family honor. The woman speaks of her children's welfare, her fear of the younger brother's temper, her desire to choose her own path. The outside man says little, understanding that his position is precarious. Interfering with established family claims could see him exiled or worse. "Bring me the bones of judgment," your grandmother commands, and her assistant, another postmenopausal woman with the authority to handle sacred objects, produces the bag that's been passed down through generations of female judges. These aren't ordinary bones, but the finger bones of legendary judges, women whose wisdom resolved conflicts that threatened to tear the world apart. Their presence transforms gossip into trial, complaints into cases worthy of precedent. The judgment process follows laws older than memory. First comes the recitation of similar cases, pulled from the vast repository of precedent that elder women carry in their minds like libraries. Your grandmother recalls the case of Singing River, who chose her own path after her husband's death and founded a new band. She mentions Broken Wing, who stayed with her husband's brother and watched her children prosper under his protection. Each story adds weight to different sides of the argument. Then comes the consultation with other elder women. They whisper together. These grandmothers who've outlived husbands, buried children, survived famines and feuds, their collective centuries of experience distill into wisdom no younger person could approximate. When they speak of consequences, they're not theorizing. They're remembering what happened last time and the time before that, stretching back to the edge of memory. The children, one says, must not be separated. Twins share a soul. The woman has skills, another adds. She knows the southern plants. Valuable knowledge shouldn't be wasted on an unhappy marriage, but the family claims are strong. Ignoring them opens paths to chaos. Your grandmother absorbs it all, then enters the judgment trance. This isn't the dramatic possession of spirit walkers, but something quieter, deeper, a state where personal feelings dissolve and only law remains. When she speaks again, her voice carries the authority of every woman who's ever had to choose between heart and tradition. The twins shall remain with their mother. This is absolute. But the mother must choose by the new moon, stay with the brother who claims her, leave with the man she favors, or walk alone. Each path brings different obligations. She outlines these obligations in detail that would make modern lawyers weep with envy if she stays. Specific resource-sharing agreements activate if she leaves. Compensation must be paid if she walks alone. The band supports her for exactly one turning of seasons while she establishes independence on. The genius of the judgment lies not in its fairness. Fairness is a luxury your world can't always afford, but in its practicality. Every option remains viable while carrying costs that prevent casual choosing. The woman gains agency, but not freedom from consequence. The brothers retain honor but lose automatic ownership. The community maintains stability while allowing change. It's the kind of solution only someone who's watched 100 similar conflicts could devise later. As the crowds disperse, you help your grandmother back to her shelter. Her body is failing, joints that creak like old leather, eyes clouding with the milk sickness, but her mind remains sharp as obsidian. Power is wasted on the young, she tells you, settling onto her sleeping furs. They think it comes from strength or beauty or fertility. Real power comes from surviving long enough that everyone who might challenge you is dead. She's joking, but only partially. The elder women's judicial authority stems from practical reality. They've outlived revenge cycles, sexual jealousy, and the hot-headed foolishness that clouds younger judgment. They have no children left to favor, no mates to appease, no futures to protect beyond the band's survival. This makes them as close to impartial as humans can achieve, and everyone knows it. Your daughter brings tea brewed from the herbs that ease old bones, and your grandmother accepts it with the grace of someone who's finally comfortable being served rather than serving. Watch and learn, she tells your daughter. If you're lucky enough to reach my age, you'll understand that every law we enforce was written in someone's blood, someone's tears, someone's terrible mistake. We don't judge to punish. We judge to prevent the next tragedy, because we're the only ones who remember what tragedy really costs. Or the body lies prepared on its platform of woven branches, painted with sacred ochre and surrounded by the offerings that will ease this soul's journey to the other side. Your aunt, dead 3 days now from the wasting sickness, looks smaller than she did in life, as if death has already begun reclaiming the elements she borrowed for her time here. As the band's senior death keeper, you oversee every detail of her transition, following laws so ancient they predate human speech. Men hover at the edges of the ceremonial ground, permitted to grieve but not to interfere. Death belongs to women as surely as birth does. You who understand the doorways between worlds, who clean the first blood and the last, who sing souls into existence and sing them back out. Your nephew weeps openly for his mother, but he knows better than to cross the circle of white stones that marks female ritual space. His grief matters, but the work of death is too important for sentiment to disrupt. The preparation began the moment her breathing stopped. You and your sisters washed her body with water from the sacred spring, the one that bubbles up from depths no one has measured. Each limb was positioned according to patterns taught mother to daughter since time began. Arms crossed to hold offerings, legs bent to ease the journey, head tilted toward the sunset path. The pose looks peaceful to casual observers, but practitioners know it's designed to prevent the confused dead from finding their way back. Why do we put the red stones on her eyes? Your granddaughter asks, carefully placing the polished garnets that will weigh down the lids. You explain what your grandmother explained to you. The dead see differently than the living, and without proper weights, they might glimpse paths meant only for spirit walkers. One ghost wandering back through sheer confusion can disturb dreams for generations. Better to ensure their vision stays properly focused on the ancestor realm. The real complexity comes with deciding what accompanies the deceased. Your aunt was a master weaver, so her favorite loom weights must go with her, but not the loom itself, which passes to her daughter. Her medicine bundle presents harder choices. Some herbs can travel to the other side, continuing their healing work among the ancestors. Others must stay, their earthbound power too dangerous for spirit realms. You sort through each item, remembering which plants she gathered under full moons, which required fasting to harvest, which came from rival bands through careful trade. The food offerings follow strict protocols that would confuse future archaeologists. Meat for the journey, yes, but only from animals killed specifically for funeral rites. Their spirits contracted to guide rather than simply nourish. Seeds for planting in the ancestor gardens, but not from this year's harvest. Those belong to the living. Water in special vessels that break after 3 days, ensuring the dead drink their fill, then move on rather than lingering at familiar springs. Your sister begins the death songs as darkness falls. These aren't the wailing lamentations that men expect, but something more complex. Part history, part navigation guide, part negotiation with whatever forces control the borders between worlds. The songs name every significant moment of your aunt's life, creating a spirit map she can follow when memories grow confused. They also remind listening spirits of debts owed and favors earned, ensuring she receives proper welcome rather than hostile questioning. She saved Longspear's son from drowning, one verse recalls. His spirit owes her passage across the dark river. She shared winter food with the cliff-bound grandmother, another adds. That elder's ghost will speak for her at the judgment fire. The songs continue through the night, building a resume of kindnesses that should ease her transition. Historians still argue whether prehistoric peoples believed literally in these reciprocal spirit debts or used them as metaphorical comfort. Having felt the temperature drop when naming certain obligations, watched candle flames bend toward specific offerings, you know which interpretation you believe. Dawn brings the most challenging phase, determining who inherits not just possessions but positions. Your aunt held 3 crucial roles: keeper of the shell records, teacher of puberty rites, and knower of the southern plant medicines. Each position must pass to someone capable, but family claims complicate merit-based selection. Her daughter has rights, but lacks the memory for shell reading. Her apprentice knows the plants, but hasn't experienced enough life to guide girls through their transitions. You make the only decision that prevents conflict: split the inheritance. The daughter receives the shell keeping, with an experienced woman assigned to help until she masters the patterns. The apprentice takes the plant knowledge, understanding she's now obligated to teach others more freely than her secretive mentor did. The puberty rites pass to your cousin, old enough to command respect, but young enough to remember her own transition clearly. The men will complain. They always do when women redistribute power without consulting them. But death law is absolute. The living might argue with the living, but nobody argues with the dead, and the dead speak through female interpreters. By the time your aunt's body is carried to its final resting place, a cave painted with the symbols that mark it as a woman's grave, off limits to male interference, the new order is already establishing itself. As the funeral rites conclude and your aunt's spirit officially transfers to the ancestor realm, you feel the bone-deep exhaustion that comes from mediating between worlds. The younger women clean up the ritual space while you rest, knowing that tomorrow brings another day of managing the invisible laws that keep your band functioning. But tonight, as the stars emerge like spirit eyes watching from the dark, you allow yourself a moment of satisfaction. The work is complete. Another woman has passed from this world to the next, properly prepared and celebrated. Her knowledge lives on in those she taught. Her possessions bless those she loved. Her spirit joins the vast network of grandmothers who guide and guard from beyond. The laws have been observed, the traditions maintained, the delicate balance between order and chaos preserved for another generation. You think of your own eventual passing, hopefully many seasons from now, when your hair is white as your grandmother's and your hands shake with the weight of years. Your daughters will paint your body. Your granddaughters will sing your accomplishments. Your great-granddaughters will learn from your example. The laws that govern women's lives, complex, sometimes harsh, always practical, will continue long after your bones join your aunts in the sacred caves. A wolf howls in the distance, lonely and wild, and you pull your furs closer against the night chill. Tomorrow there will be births to attend, marriages to arrange, resources to distribute, disputes to settle. The work never ends. But tonight, in this moment between one breath and the next, you rest in the certainty that you've played your part in the great chain of women stretching back to the first mother and forward to daughters not yet dreamed. The men snore by their fires. The children dream their innocent dreams, and you women keep watch as you always have, guardians of the laws that nobody writes down but everyone lives by. It's thankless work. This business of maintaining civilization through whisper networks and shell messages, through controlled distributions and strategic marriages, through birth mysteries and death protocols. But someone has to do it. And until the day men learn to bleed without dying, to track social debts as carefully as deer paths, to see the long patterns that determine survival across generations, well, that work remains in female hands. You smile at the thought, pull your sleeping furs up to your chin, and let the ancient rhythm of night sounds lull you towards sleep. The laws will still be there in the morning, waiting to be interpreted, enforced, and passed down to the next generation of daughters who probably won't appreciate them any more than you did at their age.